Hello guys, welcome to Fictional Vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto ate the Mythical Zoan, Sun God, fruit before Luffy Naruto x Boa Hancock x Yamato, One Piece. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The sun rises in strange waters. The fabric of reality tore like wet paper. Chakra, normally invisible to the naked eye, surged in violent purple-white streaks across the battlefield as the combined attack of Madara's Rinnegan and Obito's Kamui collided with Naruto's Raisin Shuriken. For a single heartbeat, time itself seemed to hesitate. Naruto Uzumaki, his body still cloaked in the golden chakra of Kurama's Bijou mode, felt the space around him collapse. His last glimpse of the fourth great ninja war was Kakashi reaching for him, mouth open in a warning that would never reach his ears. Then, nothingness. A void so absolute it seemed to consume even the concept of darkness. When consciousness returned, it came with the rhythmic slap of waves against wood and the cries of unfamiliar birds. Salt spray misted Naruto's face as he struggled to open his eyes, each lid feeling weighted with exhaustion. What happened? His voice emerged as a croak, throat parched and raw. The endless blue sky above offered no answers. Naruto forced himself upright, wincing as unfamiliar muscles protested the movement. He was sprawled across weathered wooden planking that gently rose and fell beneath him. A ship, but unlike any vessel he'd seen before. Massive white sails towered overhead, catching wind that pushed the craft through waters of a blue so intense it seemed almost artificial. No land in sight. No familiar chakra signatures. Nothing but endless ocean stretching to the horizon in every direction. Kurama, he whispered inwardly, seeking the familiar presence of the Nine Tails. A sluggish stirring answered from within. Still here, Kit. Barely. Something's different. Naruto closed his eyes, diving into his mindscape. The familiar sewer-like corridors had transformed, now resembling a vast oceanic cavern, water lapping at stone walls embedded with swirling patterns that reminded him of the Uzumaki clan symbols. At its center, Kurama lay curled, nine tails wrapped protectively around his form. The fox appeared smaller, his usual mountain-sized presence reduced to merely the height of a two-story building. What happened to you? Naruto approached, concern overriding his own disorientation. Kurama's crimson eyes opened to slits. The transition damaged the seal. Our chakra isn't flowing properly. This world, it resists our energy somehow. World? What do you mean world? Where are we? Somewhere else entirely. I can sense it. The natural energy here follows different patterns, different rules. Your jutsu colliding with that space-time technique didn't just move us through space, I believe it cast us between realities. The implications struck Naruto like Sakura's fist. You mean we can't get back? What about the war? My friends? The allied shinobi forces? I don't know, Naruto. For now, we need to understand where we are and how to survive. My chakra is rebuilding, but slowly. You'll need to be cautious until we adjust to this world's energy. Reality reasserted itself as Naruto opened his eyes. He scrambled to his feet, taking proper stock of his surroundings for the first time. The ship was massive, at least 300 feet from bow to stern, with multiple decks and a distinctive flag flying from the highest mast, a white bird-like symbol on a blue background. And he wasn't alone. Hold it right there. A man in a pristine white uniform aimed a rifle directly at Naruto's chest. How did you get aboard this vessel? Four more similarly dressed men appeared from various positions around the deck, weapons trained on him with professional precision. Their uniforms bore epaulets and insignias Naruto didn't recognize, but their militant bearing was unmistakable. Marines of some kind, Kurama growled within him. Be careful. I can barely manifest enough chakra for a basic enhancement. I don't want trouble. Naruto raised his hands slowly, assessing his options. I just woke up here. I'm not even sure where here is. The apparent leader, a man with a scarred jaw and lieutenant's bars, narrowed his eyes. A stowaway claiming ignorance. Original. He gestured to two subordinates. Secure him for the captain. Standard restraints plus seastone cuffs, he might be a devil fruit user. Devil fruit? Naruto questioned internally. No idea, Kurama replied. But they clearly consider it dangerous. The two Marines approached cautiously, one holding metal handcuffs with an unusual blue-green tint. Naruto allowed them to come close, gathering what little chakra he could access. When the first man reached for his wrist, Naruto moved. Even without his full abilities, years of combat training hadn't abandoned him. He pivoted, sweeping the Marine's legs and using the man's momentum to throw him into his companion. Both crashed to the deck as Naruto leapt backward, landing in a defensive stance. He's hostile. The lieutenant barked. Subdue him. Bullets cracked from the rifles, faster than any kunai but still trackable to Naruto's trained eyes. He dodged with fluid movements, each bullet missing by millimeters as he closed the distance. A basic body flicker technique, normally effortless, now consumed alarming amounts of his chakra, but it brought him within striking range. 3 quick strikes disabled the rifleman. Non-lethal attacks to pressure points that would leave them unconscious but unharmed. Naruto had no quarrel with these men, but he needed answers before submitting to captivity. The lieutenant drew a sword, its blade gleaming unnaturally in the sunlight. Impressive moves, he conceded, circling warily. But you've made a critical error boarding a marine vessel transporting Class S contraband. Surrender now or face the consequences. I told you, I didn't board intentionally. Naruto kept his stance loose, conserving energy. What's this devil fruit you mentioned? And where exactly are we? The lieutenant's eyebrows rose. Playing innocent. We're 3 days out from Marineford, traversing the calm belt under special propulsion. As for devil fruits, his expression darkened, if you truly don't know, then you're even more suspicious. Only someone from beyond the Grand Line would be ignorant of such things. The conversation was interrupted by a blaring alarm that echoed across the deck. The lieutenant's face paled as he glanced toward the horizon. Pirates, he spat, momentarily forgetting Naruto. All hands to battle stations. Protect the vault at all costs. The deck erupted into activity as Marines poured from below, rushing to defensive positions. Through the commotion, Naruto spotted what had triggered the alarm, a sleek black ship with crimson sails approaching at impossible speed, cutting through the waves like a predator through water. Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind. This could be our chance to gather information. These pirates and Marines are obviously opposing forces. We should observe their conflict and learn about this world's power structures. Naruto nodded, slipping into the shadows as chaos enveloped the ship. He created a single shadow clone, normally effortless, now draining a quarter of his available chakra, and sent it to scout the lower decks while he observed the impending battle. The pirate vessel drew alongside with practiced precision, grappling hooks flying across to secure the ships together. Pirates swarmed aboard, a motley crew of hardened fighters wielding an assortment of weapons from conventional swords and pistols to bizarre mechanical contraptions Naruto couldn't identify. What shocked him was the diversity of the attackers. Some appeared human, while others sported features that reminded him of the more unusual shinobi bloodlines: blue skin, extra limbs, animal characteristics. One massive individual seemed composed entirely of shifting metal. The Marines fought with disciplined coordination, but they were clearly outmatched. The pirates moved with superhuman abilities. One woman turned her entire body into flowing water, rendering bullets useless. Another man extended his limbs to impossible lengths to strike from a distance. Those must be the devil fruit powers they mentioned, Naruto realized. Some kind of bloodline limit or transformation technique. His clone's memories suddenly flooded back as it dispersed, a security measure when it encountered danger. Images of a heavily guarded vault deep within the ship flashed through his mind. Marines stationed in a reinforced chamber protecting a simple wooden chest bound with chains. Inside the clone's memories, he heard officers discussing the artifact and its imminent delivery to Cipher Pole for secure transport to Mariewa. The pirates were cutting through the marine defenses with brutal efficiency, clearly driving toward the ship's interior. Their captain, a tall woman with skin like polished onyx and eyes that glowed amber, shouted orders as she deflected bullets with a blade that shifted shape at her command. Secure the lower decks. The Ope isn't the only treasure this ship carries. Find the Sun God artifact. Naruto's instincts flared. Whatever this Sun God artifact was, both factions considered it extremely valuable. And based on his clone's reconnaissance, he knew exactly where they were keeping it. Moving through the chaos of battle, Naruto made his way below decks. The corridors were a labyrinth of narrow passages and sealed compartments, but his clone's memories guided him true. He encountered sporadic resistance, marines rushing to defend various positions and pirates cutting their way through, but managed to avoid direct confrontation through stealth and misdirection. The vault door stood ajar when he arrived, bodies of marine guards sprawled across the threshold. Inside, 3 pirates worked to break the chain securing the wooden chest, while a fourth, a wiry man with elongated fingers that seemed to function as lockpicks, focused on the lock mechanism. "Hurry up, Grift," hissed one of the pirates. "Captain says we've got 5 minutes before they blow the charges and sink this tub." "Can't rush delicate work," Grift muttered, fingers contorting unnaturally. "This lock's got seastone components." Another 30 seconds. Naruto assessed the situation. The pirates planned to sink the ship and everyone aboard once they secured their prizes. He couldn't allow that, regardless of which side was right in this conflict, innocent lives were at stake. He formed a quick plan, gathering what little chakra he could access. Creating 2 more shadow clones drained him severely, but they would be essential for his strategy. As the pirates finally broke through the lock and lifted the chest's lid, Naruto struck. His first clone burst into the room, drawing the pirates' attention with a flash bomb crafted from materials in his ninja pouch. The second clone attacked from above, dropping from an overhead ventilation shaft as Naruto himself slipped in through the confusion. The battle was brief but intense. Without access to his usual techniques, Naruto relied on taijutsu and basic ninja tools. The pirates fought with unexpected abilities, one generating sonic screams that shattered metal, another producing bone spikes from his skin, but they weren't prepared for Naruto's coordinated clone assault. Within moments, all 4 pirates lay unconscious, and Naruto stood over the open chest, staring at its contents, a strange fruit that resembled nothing so much as a swirling pattern of flames frozen in crimson and gold, with distinctive spiral patterns across its surface. "That's it?" he wondered. "All this security for a piece of fruit? Don't underestimate it," Kurama cautioned. "I sense something from that object. A power that resonates oddly with our own chakra. Be careful." The ship suddenly lurched violently, throwing Naruto against the wall as explosions thundered through the hull. Water began pouring through rapidly widening cracks in the lower bulkheads. "They've started sinking the ship," Naruto realized, steadying himself against the tilting floor. More explosions rocked the vessel, and the ceiling partially collapsed, blocking the exit. Water rose rapidly around his ankles as Naruto searched for an escape route, the chest with its mysterious fruit clutched under one arm. "We need to get to the upper decks," he muttered, splashing through the rising seawater. His remaining clone dispersed itself, conserving chakra as Naruto kicked through a weakened bulkhead into an adjoining corridor. The ship groaned around him, metal and wood protesting as it began its descent into the depths. Marines and pirates alike scrambled for escape, all thoughts of their conflict forgotten in the face of imminent drowning. Naruto fought against the current of flooding water and fleeing combatants, helping those trapped by debris when he could. A massive explosion from somewhere deep within the ship sent a pressure wave that knocked Naruto off his feet. The chest flew from his grasp, its contents tumbling across the flooding corridor. As he struggled to his feet, lungs burning from the smoke filling the passageway, he saw the strange fruit bobbing in the rising water. "It'll be destroyed in the saltwater," came Kurama's urgent thought. "Whatever power it contains will be lost." Without considering the consequences, Naruto lunged forward and grabbed the fruit. It felt warm in his hand, pulsing with an energy that seemed to call to him. The ship tilted sharply, more water pouring in as the vessel's structural integrity failed. In that moment of desperation, with escape routes vanishing and water rising around him, Naruto made an instinctive decision. He bit into the fruit. The taste was indescribable, simultaneously the most revolting and exhilarating sensation he'd ever experienced. Like biting into ash, sunlight, and thunder all at once. The texture changed even as he chewed, transforming from solid to something that flowed like liquid fire down his throat. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then his body erupted with power. It wasn't chakra, not exactly, but something both alien and strangely familiar. Energy coursed through his pathways like liquid sunlight, rewriting the very nature of his physical form. Naruto felt his body becoming simultaneously more solid and more fluid, as if his very cells were learning to dance between states of matter. "What's happening?" he gasped mentally, watching as his skin briefly took on a gleaming white hue before returning to normal. "You've consumed some kind of power source," Kurama answered, his voice stronger than before. "It's interacting with our chakra system in ways I don't understand. But it's giving us an energy boost, use it to escape." The ship gave one final groan before splitting apart completely. Naruto found himself suddenly submerged in the ocean's embrace, cold seawater rushing into his lungs as currents pulled him deeper. Panic seized him, not just from drowning, but from an unexpected weakness that suddenly pervaded his body. The moment the seawater surrounded him, both his chakra and the new energy from the fruit seemed to drain away, leaving him as powerless as a civilian. "The water negates your powers," Kurama roared in alarm. "Fight your way to the surface." Naruto kicked desperately, fighting against both the ship's suction and his own suddenly leaden limbs. His vision darkened at the edges as oxygen deprivation set in. Just as consciousness began to slip away, his hand broke the surface, followed by his head. Gasping for air, he treaded water as best he could, watching the massive marine vessel disappear beneath the waves. The pirate ship was already a distant silhouette on the horizon, clearly having abandoned both their unconscious comrades and their secondary prize in favor of a swift escape. Debris floated around him, splintered wood, empty barrels, torn sails. Naruto pulled himself onto a section of decking large enough to support his weight, collapsing in exhaustion as the adrenaline drained from his system. "What have I gotten myself into?" he murmured, staring at the cloudless sky above. "Something unprecedented," Kurama answered. "That fruit has fundamentally changed your body. I can sense it integrating with your chakra network, adapting our energy to this world's rules. Rest while you can, we're at the mercy of the currents now." For 3 days and nights, Naruto drifted on the makeshift raft. The strange new power within him surged and ebbed like the tides themselves, occasionally manifesting in startling ways, his limbs stretching to impossible lengths when he reached for floating supplies, or his skin hardening to deflect the harsh midday sun. Each discovery brought new questions, but no answers were forthcoming from the empty horizon. Kurama's knowledge proved invaluable for survival. The fox taught him to capture rainwater in cupped leaves and identify edible sea life that occasionally ventured near his raft. More importantly, they began experimenting with his transformed body, learning its strengths and limitations through careful trial and error. "So I can stretch like rubber," Naruto observed on the second day, extending his arm to twice its normal length, "but I'm not actually made of rubber. I still feel pain and temperature normally." "It's more complex than simple elasticity," Kurama replied. "Your body seems able to adopt different properties at will, once you learn to control them. The fruit has granted you transformative abilities beyond mere stretching. And water is my weakness now. That's inconvenient for someone stranded at sea. Not just water, specifically seawater. Fresh water doesn't seem to affect you the same way. It's as if the ocean itself rejects the power you've absorbed. By the third day, hunger and exposure had taken their toll. Naruto lay semi-conscious on his dwindling platform, the tropical sun beating down mercilessly. His lips were cracked from dehydration, skin reddened despite his natural resilience. In his delirium, he thought he heard women's voices carried on the wind. The sound of arrows cutting through air. The creak of wood that wasn't his disintegrating raft. A man. Here. How did he survive in the calm belt? Look at his strange clothes, not a marine or any pirate I recognize. Be cautious, sisters. Men are inherently deceitful. Cool hands lifted him, transferring his weakened body to a solid surface that didn't sway with every wave. Naruto forced his eyes open, catching glimpses of female warriors with serpentine bows and unfamiliar armor before unconsciousness claimed him completely. The scent of unfamiliar herbs and sea air roused Naruto from dreamless sleep. He lay on a soft pallet in a circular stone chamber, sunlight streaming through high windows carved into the rock. His tattered orange and black outfit had been replaced by loose-fitting trousers of some silky material, his upper body left bare but clean of the salt and grime of his ocean ordeal. You're finally awake. The voice was feminine but authoritative, carrying both caution and curiosity. Naruto turned his head to find a woman seated nearby, her posture alert despite her relaxed position. She wore revealing attire that emphasized her athletic physique, with serpentine designs woven into the fabric. A large snake coiled peacefully beside her, its tongue flicking occasionally to taste the air. Where am I? Naruto asked, his voice rough from disuse. Amazon Lily. The Isle of Women. She studied him with undisguised suspicion. Men are forbidden here, but our scouts found you half dead on flotsam in our waters. The Empress allowed you to be brought here for questioning once you recovered. Naruto processed this information slowly, his mind still foggy. Thank you for saving me. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I am Marguerite, warrior of the Kuja tribe. She stood gracefully. Now that you're conscious, the Empress will want to see you immediately. The Empress? Boa Hancock, the Snake Princess and ruler of Amazon Lily. Marguerite's expression softened slightly. She is the most beautiful woman in the world and our strongest warrior. Her word is absolute law on this island. Careful, Kurama warned. I sense we've landed in a complex political situation. This isolated female society clearly has strict rules about outsiders, especially men. Naruto nodded imperceptibly, then slowly sat up, testing his recovered strength. The new energy from the fruit thrummed beneath his skin, more integrated with his chakra now, as if his 3 days of unconsciousness had allowed the powers to harmonize. I'm ready to meet her, he said, rising to his feet. I have many questions too. Marguerite's eyes widened slightly. Most men would be terrified at the prospect of facing the Snake Princess. Naruto offered a genuine smile. I've learned it's better to approach potential allies with respect rather than fear. She seemed taken aback by his response but quickly composed herself. Follow me, and remember, any disrespect toward the Empress is punishable by death. The island of Amazon Lily revealed itself as Marguerite led him through winding stone passageways that opened into a city unlike any Naruto had seen before. Architecture reminiscent of ancient temples blended with practical structures, all built in harmony with the lush tropical environment. Women of all ages moved purposefully through markets and training grounds, many carrying weapons and all regarding Naruto with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. They don't see men often, do they? Naruto observed quietly. Most Kuja warriors have never seen a man in their lives, Marguerite confirmed. Our island is protected by sea kings and located within the calm belt, where normal navigation is impossible. Few outsiders find us, and fewer still leave to tell about it. The path led upward, toward an immense palace carved into the very mountain that formed the island's spine. Massive stone snakes flanked the entrance, their carved eyes seeming to follow Naruto's progress as guards in ceremonial armor stepped aside for Marguerite. The throne room was a testament to both opulence and martial pride. Weapons of exceptional craftsmanship adorned walls inlaid with precious metals and gems. Sunlight streamed through colored glass, casting rainbow patterns across the stone floor. At the chamber's far end, upon a dais shaped like a coiled serpent, sat the most commanding woman Naruto had ever encountered. Boa Hancock reclined on her throne with the casual confidence of absolute authority. Her beauty was undeniable, flawless features framed by flowing black hair, a figure that combined feminine grace with obvious physical power. But it was her presence that truly captured attention, an aura of dominance that reminded Naruto of the most powerful shinobi leaders. Flanking her throne stood two women who bore a familial resemblance, one exceptionally tall with flowing green hair, the other shorter with orange hair styled in distinctive rings. Both watched Naruto with expressions significantly less controlled than their sister's perfect mask of indifference. So this is the man found drifting in our waters. Hancock's voice carried effortlessly across the chamber, musical yet imperious. Approach, stranger, and explain your presence near our sacred island. Naruto walked forward with measured steps, stopping at a respectful distance. He bowed slightly, enough to show courtesy without subservience. Thank you for allowing me into your home, Empress. I am Naruto Uzumaki, and I arrived in your waters by accident after a shipwreck. You expect me to believe you accidentally drifted into the calm belt? Hancock's perfect eyebrow arched skeptically. These waters are avoided by all but the most foolhardy navigators due to the sea kings that infest them. I'm not from these seas, Naruto replied honestly. Where I come from, we don't have sea kings or calm belts. I was caught in a transportation accident that brought me far from home. Interesting. Hancock leaned forward slightly. You claim to be from beyond the Grand Line. Perhaps from the mythical land of Wano, closed to outsiders. She's testing you, Kurama advised. These geographical references mean nothing to us, but admitting complete ignorance could be dangerous. I'm from a place called the Hidden Leaf Village, in the Land of Fire, Naruto answered, deciding that partial truth was safer than fabrication. It's not any place you would have heard of. The taller sister leaned down to whisper something in Hancock's ear, prompting a slight narrowing of the Empress's eyes. Marguerite reports that you were found with unusual energies emanating from your body while unconscious. Are you a devil fruit user? Naruto considered his response carefully. I ate a strange fruit shortly before my shipwreck. It tasted terrible but gave me new abilities I'm still learning to control. If that's what you mean by a devil fruit, then yes. Show me, Hancock commanded, her tone leaving no room for refusal. Naruto nodded, focusing on the warmth that had been building within him since consuming the fruit. He raised his arm and concentrated, watching as his skin began to glow with a faint white luminescence before his limb stretched to twice its normal length, then snapped back to normal. Gasps echoed through the throne room. The shorter sister clutched the taller one's arm, whispering urgently, Marigold, did you see that? His arms stretched like rubber. Hancock herself maintained her composed expression, though her eyes sharpened with interest. A paramecia type, similar to abilities I've witnessed before. Yet the glow is unusual. She rose from her throne in a fluid motion that commanded attention. What else can you do? I'm still discovering that myself, Naruto admitted. But I have other abilities unrelated to the fruit. In my homeland, I'm what's called a shinobi, a ninja. Demonstrate, Hancock ordered, descending the steps of her dais with predatory grace. Naruto formed a simple hand sign, gathering his chakra, which flowed more readily now than it had immediately after his arrival. A puff of smoke enveloped him, and when it cleared, an exact duplicate of Hancock stood where he had been, mimicking her regal posture perfectly. The throne room erupted in shocked exclamations. Guards raised weapons, the sister called Marigold stepped protectively forward, and Hancock herself froze mid-step, eyes widening in genuine surprise. Naruto released the transformation immediately, returning to his natural form with hands raised placatingly. It's just an illusion technique. Where I come from, shinobi learn these skills for reconnaissance and combat. Fascinating, Hancock murmured, recovering her composure with remarkable speed. You possess both devil fruit powers and these, shinobi abilities. She circled him slowly, examining him from all angles. You're either an exceptionally dangerous spy or the most interesting castaway to ever reach our shores. I assure you, I'm not a spy, Naruto said earnestly. I'm just trying to understand where I am and how to get home. Hancock stopped directly before him, her height placing them nearly eye to eye. This close, Naruto could see the calculating intelligence behind her perfect features, a mind as sharp as any Hokage's evaluating potential threats and advantages. We shall see. She turned abruptly, addressing the throne room at large. The stranger will remain under house arrest while we verify his claims. Marguerite, you found him, you will be responsible for his supervision. Ensure he remains within the designated guest quarters and learns our ways. Yes, Snake Princess. Marguerite bowed deeply. Hancock returned to her throne, waving a dismissive hand. You may go. We will speak again once I've consulted with the elders about this development. As Marguerite led him from the throne room, Naruto couldn't help but notice Hancock watching him with an intensity that suggested their conversation had raised more questions than it had answered. The guest quarters proved to be a comfortable but secure chamber carved into the mountainside, with a small balcony overlooking the island's lush interior. Marguerite explained the rules. He was to remain within these rooms unless escorted by her or another appointed guard. Meals would be brought regularly, and any attempt to explore the island independently would be met with immediate force. Your situation is unprecedented, she explained, her initial suspicion gradually softening into cautious curiosity. No man has been allowed to stay on Amazon Lily in living memory. The Empress must have her reasons. She seems like someone who always has reasons for what she does, Naruto observed, settling cross-legged on a cushioned mat near the balcony opening. Marguerite's expression grew serious. The Snake Princess has protected our tribe through difficult times. Her beauty is matched only by her strength and wisdom. Over the following days, a routine developed. Marguerite would arrive each morning to check on him, often staying to ask questions about his world and abilities. Naruto, in turn, learned about the strange world he'd found himself in, a planet dominated by vast oceans where land masses were scattered like islands in a blue infinity. He heard about the Grand Line, the Four Blues, the world government, and the age of pirates sparked by the legendary Gold Roger. So these devil fruits grant unique powers to whoever eats them, Naruto summarized during one such conversation, but they take away your ability to swim. Exactly, Marguerite confirmed, feeding a piece of fruit to the small snake always draped across her shoulders. Each devil fruit is unique in the world. Once someone eats one, it reappears somewhere else after their death. And no one knows where they come from originally. There are legends, she shrugged, but nothing certain. The Empress and her sisters possess the powers of the snake fruit models, which allow them to transform into serpents of different types. Naruto contemplated this information, connecting it with what he'd experienced. The fruit I ate, it lets me stretch, but there seems to be more to it. Sometimes my skin glows white, and I feel different. Stronger, somehow. Marguerite's expression grew troubled. From your description and what we observed when you demonstrated in the throne room, some of the elders believe you may have consumed an extremely rare type, a mythical Zoan. What's that? Most Zoan fruits allow transformation into animals. Mythical Zoans grant the powers of legendary creatures, beings of immense power that may have never actually existed. She lowered her voice. If true, it would explain the Empress's interest in you. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside, shouts of alarm and the distinctive sound of weapons being readied. Naruto was on his feet instantly, ninja reflexes carrying him to the balcony before Marguerite could protest. In the harbor below, a marine vessel had appeared, a sleek warship flying the same flag he'd seen on the ship where he'd found the fruit. Kuja warriors were mobilizing along the shoreline, serpent bows drawn and tension visible even from this distance. "They shouldn't be here," Marguerite whispered, joining him at the railing. "Marines rarely approach Amazon Lily, and never without sending messengers first. Could they be looking for me?" Naruto asked, guilt surging at the thought of bringing trouble to the people who had saved his life. "Impossible. No one outside the island knows you're here." Her eyes narrowed as she studied the ship. "Unless..." A small boat detached from the warship, carrying a contingent of marines toward shore. At their head stood a figure that radiated authority, a broad-shouldered man in a white coat that billowed in the sea breeze. Vice Admiral Momonga, Marguerite identified him. A high-ranking marine officer. "This is an official visit." She turned to Naruto, expression grave. "Stay here. Under no circumstances reveal yourself. If the Marines discover a man on Amazon Lily, it could jeopardize our standing with the world government." She hurried away, leaving Naruto to watch the unfolding diplomatic situation from his elevated vantage point. Though too distant to hear the exchange, the body language between the Marine contingent and the Kuja warriors bristled with tension. "They're looking for the fruit," Kurama observed. The marine vessel that was transporting it must have been important enough to trigger a search when it disappeared. "And now the power is inside me," Naruto murmured. "If they discover that, they would likely attempt to capture or kill you to study the effects. From what we've learned of this world's power structures, unique abilities are highly coveted." Naruto watched as Hancock herself appeared at the harbor, her regal bearing unmistakable even at this distance. The negotiation appeared to grow more heated, with the Vice Admiral gesturing emphatically while Hancock remained icily composed. Then, without warning, the Marine officer drew his sword, not pointing it at Hancock, but holding it formally before him. Even from his distant position, Naruto could sense the shift in atmosphere. This was not an attack but some kind of ultimatum or declaration. Hancock's response was immediate and dramatic. She swept her hand in a fluid arc, and several Marines in the background simply collapsed. Not struck by weapons or projectiles, but falling as if their strength had been suddenly sapped. "She has powerful abilities," Kurama noted with interest. "Different from chakra, but formidable nonetheless." The confrontation escalated rapidly. More Marines emerged from the ship, while Kuja warriors converged from across the island. The Vice Admiral himself seemed unaffected by whatever technique Hancock had employed against his subordinates, engaging her directly with his sword. Naruto's hands tightened on the balcony railing. Every instinct urged him to intervene, to protect the people who had shown him hospitality despite their suspicion. But revealing himself could make the situation worse, confirming for the Marines that Amazon Lily was harboring not just a man, but the very individual who possessed the power they sought. His decision was made for him when a stray cannon blast from the warship struck near a group of younger Kuja warriors who had been maintaining a defensive perimeter. The explosion sent them scattering, several falling wounded among the debris. "I can't just watch this," Naruto growled, leaping from the balcony to a lower rooftop. "What are you planning?" Kurama demanded. "Something stupid," Naruto admitted, channeling chakra to enhance his speed as he raced toward the harbor. "But I won't let people get hurt because of me." The battle at the shoreline had deteriorated into chaos. Marines with specialized weapons engaged the snake-wielding Kuja warriors, while Hancock and her sisters faced off against the Vice Admiral and his senior officers. Despite the Amazon's formidable combat skills, the Marines' superior numbers and firepower were pushing them back from the harbor. Naruto paused on a rooftop overlooking the conflict, assessing the situation. Hancock moved with incredible grace, her technique seeming to petrify enemies with a mere touch. Her sisters had partially transformed into massive serpentine forms, constricting Marine squads and disabling their weapons. But the Vice Admiral himself glowed with a strange dark energy that seemed to repel their strongest attacks. "Surrender the artifact, Pirate Empress." Momonga's voice carried across the battlefield. "We know the sun god fruit was aboard the transport that disappeared in your waters. The five elders themselves have ordered its recovery at any cost. Your accusations are baseless, Hancock replied coldly, deflecting his sword strike with a kick that would have shattered ordinary steel. Amazon Lily has no interest in your precious artifacts. We maintain our neutrality, as guaranteed by my warlord status. That status is under review given recent developments, the Vice Admiral countered. Cooperate now, and perhaps it can be preserved. Their exchange was interrupted by another volley from the warship, this one targeting the village structures behind the defending Kuja forces. Civilians who had been evacuating found themselves in the line of fire as masonry exploded around them. Naruto moved without further hesitation. Chakra surged through his system, amplified by the strange new power of the fruit. He felt the energy manifesting differently than before, less like the controlled flow of his ninja techniques and more like a wild current seeking expression. As he leapt from the rooftop, time seemed to slow around him. His body began to glow with that same white luminescence he'd demonstrated for Hancock, but more intense now, an aura of brilliant energy that trailed behind him like solar flares. He landed between the fleeing civilians and the incoming bombardment, hands outstretched toward the artillery shells. Instinctively, he reached for the power thrumming within him, and his arms stretched impossibly, growing to gigantic proportions while maintaining their human shape. "What the?" he gasped, but there was no time for surprise. With hands now large enough to engulf a small building, Naruto caught the incoming projectiles, feeling their explosive force detonate against his transformed palms. Pain registered distantly, but the fruit's power rendered. His enlarged limbs rubbery and resilient, absorbing the blast that should have obliterated ordinary flesh. The harbor fell momentarily silent as both Kuja warriors and marines stared in shock at the glowing figure who had intercepted the barrage. Naruto's arms shrank back to normal size, steam rising from his palms where the explosions had made contact. "That's enough," he called out, voice carrying with unexpected resonance. "These people aren't hiding anything from you. I'm what you're looking for." Vice Admiral Momonga recovered first, his experienced eyes narrowing as he evaluated this new threat. "The sun god fruit, you consumed it." It wasn't a question but a realization laced with dismay. "Do you have any idea what you've done, boy?" "Not really," Naruto admitted, moving to stand protectively before the Amazon forces. "But I know I won't let you harm innocent people while trying to get it back." "Naruto." Marguerite had pushed through the ranks of warriors, her expression torn between alarm and admiration. "The Empress ordered you to remain hidden." "Sorry," he replied without taking his eyes off the Marines, "but that's not my ninja way. I don't abandon people who need help." Hancock herself appeared beside him, her cold fury palpable. "You've defied my direct command," she stated, but her anger seemed directed equally at the Marines. "We will discuss your punishment later, if we survive this incident." Momonga pointed his blade directly at Naruto. "In the name of the world government, I place you under arrest for theft of classified property. Surrender peacefully or face immediate execution." Naruto dropped into a fighting stance, chakra swirling visibly around his form as the fruit's power resonated in harmony with his ninja energy. "I've never been good at surrendering," he responded, a confident grin spreading across his face despite the danger. "And I've faced worse odds than this." The Vice Admiral's expression hardened. "You have no concept of the forces you're defying, boy. That power you've stolen, the mythical Zoan type, model, Nika, the sun god, is considered the most dangerous fruit in existence by the five elders themselves. Its previous users have threatened the very foundations of the world government." "Nika?" Naruto repeated, the name resonating strangely within him. "The sun god? That explains the sensations," Kurama murmured. "This power feels ancient, primordial, even. Similar to the Sage of Six Paths energy in some ways." "All the more reason he should not fall into your hands," Hancock interjected, stepping forward to stand beside Naruto. Her posture shifted subtly, combat-ready yet regally composed. "Amazon Lily extends its protection to this man as our guest." Any action against him will be considered an act of war against the Kuja tribe. Momonga's eyes narrowed. You would risk your status as a warlord for this stranger. I would risk it to defend Amazon Lily's sovereignty, she replied coldly. You attacked our shores without provocation or declaration. The world government will hear of this violation. The vice admiral assessed the tactical situation with a veteran's eye, his forces engaged with the island's warriors, reinforcements too distant to arrive quickly, and now confronted with not just the formidable Snake Princess but also an unknown combatant wielding one of the world's most feared powers. This isn't over, he declared finally, lowering his sword marginally. The 5 elders will be informed of this development. Expect a response at the highest levels. He barked orders to his marines, who began a disciplined withdrawal toward their landing craft. Wounded were carried by comrades, weapons remained trained on the Kuja forces to cover their retreat. As the marines pulled back, Hancock turned to Naruto, her expression unreadable. You've drawn the attention of the world government's highest authorities to my island, she stated flatly. The consequences will be severe. Naruto met her gaze steadily. I'm sorry for bringing trouble to your doorstep, he replied. Sincerely. But I couldn't watch your people get hurt because of me. Something flickered in Hancock's eyes, a momentary softening of her imperious mask. Before she could respond, Marguerite approached with urgent news. Snake Princess, the elder healers report 15 warriors wounded, 3 critically. The village sustained significant damage from the bombardment. Hancock nodded sharply. Organize the repair efforts. Ensure all wounded receive treatment. She returned her attention to Naruto. You have medical knowledge as part of your shinobi training. Some basic field medicine, yes. Then make yourself useful. Help with the wounded. She turned to leave, then added without looking back, your actions were foolish but brave. We will discuss your future on Amazon Lily once this crisis is managed. As she strode away, Naruto caught Marguerite watching him with new respect in her eyes. You stood alongside the Snake Princess against a vice admiral, she said quietly. No one has seen such a thing in my lifetime. I just did what anyone would do, Naruto replied, already moving toward the injured warriors. Marguerite fell into step beside him. No. What you did is what a Kuja would do, protect the tribe regardless of personal risk. She glanced toward the retreating marine vessels. But I fear this is just the beginning of our troubles. Naruto looked toward the horizon, where the warship was already growing smaller against the endless blue. The power of the sun god thrummed within him, somehow both foreign and increasingly familiar. Kurama's presence in his mind felt stronger than before, as if the fruit's energy had helped his chakra adapt to this world's different rules. Whatever comes next, he said with quiet determination, I'll face it head-on. That's my ninja way. The sun began its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across Amazon Lily as its inhabitants tended their wounded and repaired their damaged homes. On this island of women, a shinobi from another world had taken his first steps toward a destiny neither he nor they could possibly foresee, one that would eventually shake the very foundations of the world order. Chapter 2, Dancing with Shadows. 3 years could transform a castaway into a legend. Pale moonlight danced across Amazon Lily's highest peak where Naruto Uzumaki stood silhouetted against the night sky. No longer the disoriented stranger who had washed ashore, he had grown into something extraordinary, a fusion of shinobi discipline and mythical power that the women of Kuja had come to respect, if not entirely understand. His golden hair had lengthened, now pulled back with a band of Kuja craftsmanship. The spiral tattoo circling his left bicep, inked in ceremonial recognition of his contributions to the tribe's defense, gleamed with a subtle luminescence that wasn't entirely natural. Years of training under the tropical sun had bronzed his skin and hardened already impressive musculature. You've made your decision then. The voice behind him held no question. Boa Hancock approached with that singular grace that commanded attention without effort. The pirate empress wore simple evening attire rather than her formal regalia, her hair loose around her shoulders, a sight few were privileged to witness. You knew I would eventually, Naruto replied, not turning from his contemplation of the horizon. We've delayed the inevitable long enough. The silence between them carried the weight of 3 years' complicated history, mentor and student, reluctant allies, and something neither had fully articulated. The world government has intensified their efforts, Hancock finally said, moving to stand beside him at the precipice. Their last communique threatened to revoke my warlord status if I continue harboring you. Which is precisely why I need to leave. Naruto finally turned to face her, moonlight illuminating the determination in his cerulean eyes. I won't be the reason Amazon Lily loses its protection. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers from the forest below. For a moment, the formidable empress seemed to hesitate, an uncharacteristic vulnerability crossing her perfect features. Where will you go? She asked, her typical imperious tone softened almost imperceptibly. West, into the Grand Line. Naruto gestured toward the endless expanse of ocean beyond the island's protective mists. The old Rayleigh mentioned rumors of others who've wielded powers similar to mine. If I'm going to understand what this sun god truly means, I need to follow those threads. Hancock's laugh held little humor. The Grand Line devours the unprepared, Naruto. Even with your unique abilities. Good thing I won't be unprepared. A smile crossed his face, genuine despite the circumstances. I've had the Snake Princess herself as my guide to this world for 3 years. Not many can claim that advantage. The compliment produced an almost imperceptible flush across Hancock's cheeks, a reaction she would allow no one else to witness. Their relationship had evolved in unexpected ways since that first confrontation with the Marines. What began as suspicious tolerance transformed gradually into respectful alliance, then something deeper that neither fully acknowledged. You've mastered only the fundamentals of hockey, she countered, professionalism reasserting itself. Your control of the Nika fruit's powers remains inconsistent. The New World would. I'm not heading to the New World yet, Naruto interrupted gently. I know my limitations. But staying here puts everyone at risk. The events of the previous month had proven his point beyond debate. A squadron of Cypher Pole agents had infiltrated the island, nearly capturing several Kuja children before Naruto and the warriors drove them back. The message was clear, the world government's patience had expired. The small vessel is prepared as you requested, Hancock said after a long pause. Marguerite has stocked it with provisions for a fortnight's journey. The eternal pose to sobriety is hidden in the navigational chest. Thank you. Naruto's voice carried sincere gratitude. For everything. Hancock turned away, her profile regal against the starlit backdrop. You've repaid any debt tenfold. Your training techniques have strengthened our warriors beyond what I thought possible. The integration of chakra concepts with our haki has created advantages our enemies cannot anticipate. What remained unsaid hung between them, how his persistence had gradually penetrated her carefully constructed walls of disdain toward men, how his sincere respect had proved that not all males embodied the cruelty she had experienced in her youth, how his unwavering defense of the island had earned him a place in Kuja history. I've left scrolls with Elder Nyan, Naruto said, breaking the weighted silence. Advanced techniques for those warriors who've shown aptitude for chakra manipulation. Koten, Kikyo, and Aphilandra particularly. Always the teacher. A hint of genuine amusement colored Hancock's voice. They'll miss their demon fox sensei. Naruto chuckled at the nickname the younger Kuja had bestowed upon him after witnessing Kurama's chakra manifestation during a particularly grueling training session. And I'll miss them. All of you. The admission prompted Hancock to face him again, her legendary composure slipping just enough to reveal the question she wouldn't voice aloud. I'll return, Naruto promised, answering her unspoken concern. Once I've learned enough to control these powers fully, once I'm no longer a danger to Amazon Lily by my presence alone. Hancock studied him with an intensity that would have paralyzed most men. The sea is vast, Naruto Uzumaki. Many who leave these shores are never seen again. Then I'll just have to be the exception. His grin flashed white in the darkness. It's kind of my specialty. Something shifted in her expression, a decision reached after internal debate. With fluid grace that belied the significance of the gesture, Hancock removed a pendant from around her neck. The serpentine ornament gleamed with a metallic sheen that wasn't entirely natural. "Take this," she said, extending it toward him. "It contains a fragment of sea prism stone within the setting, not enough to weaken you, but sufficient that those with knowledge of such things will recognize its significance." Naruto accepted the pendant with appropriate reverence, recognizing the extraordinary gesture from a woman who shared her possessions with no one. "What will it tell them?" "That you stand under the protection of the Pirate Empress." Her chin lifted slightly, imperial pride reasserting itself. "Not all will respect such a claim, but those who understand the delicate politics of this world will hesitate before moving against you." Naruto slipped the pendant over his head, the weight of it against his chest feeling somehow right. "I'm honored." "As you should be." Hancock's mask of aloof dignity had returned completely, but her eyes betrayed deeper emotions. "Dawn approaches. If you intend to depart with the morning tide, you should make your farewells to the others." She turned to leave, then paused, glancing back over her shoulder. "Remember your promise, Naruto of the Hidden Leaf. Amazon Lily will hold you to your word." As she disappeared down the mountain path, Naruto touched the pendant thoughtfully. In 3 years, he had learned to read beneath Hancock's imperious exterior to the vulnerable woman beneath, a woman whose heart had been shattered by cruelty in her youth, pieced back together through sheer force of will, and protected behind walls of breathtaking arrogance. That she had allowed him glimpses beyond those walls represented a trust more profound than any verbal declaration. "I'll come back," he whispered to the night, a vow meant for his own heart as much as hers. "That's a promise of a lifetime." Dawn broke over Amazon Lily in watercolor brushstrokes of crimson and gold. The harbor hummed with subdued activity as Kuja warriors gathered to witness Naruto's departure. No men left the island under normal circumstances, certainly none departed with gifts, blessings, and the grudging respect of the tribe's fiercest defenders. Marguerite supervised the final loading of supplies, her efficiency masking the emotion she wouldn't display publicly. "The navigational charts are secured below deck," she reported. Elder Nyan added her personal notes on the seasonal currents between here and Sabaody. "Thank her for me." Naruto adjusted the pack containing his few personal possessions, scrolls of jutsu techniques, specialized kunai crafted by Kuja metallurgists, and a carved bone flute gifted by the children he'd taught. Marguerite's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "You taught me to tree walk," she said abruptly, referencing the chakra control exercise that had transformed Kuja combat tactics. "Before you, we were bound to the earth despite our strength." "You were always meant to soar," Naruto replied with characteristic genuineness. "I just showed you how to channel what was already there." A commotion at the harbor entrance interrupted their farewell. The crowd parted as Hancock approached, flanked by her sisters Sandersonia and Marigold. Unlike the previous night's private meeting, the Snake Princess now wore her full ceremonial attire, a statement to all witnesses that this departure carried official sanction. Murmurs rippled through the assembled Kuja as Hancock raised a hand for silence. Her public acknowledgement of Naruto's departure was unprecedented, no man had ever been granted such recognition in living memory. "Warriors of Amazon Lily," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly across the harbor, "today we witness the departure of one who came to our shores as stranger but leaves as ally." Her perfect features remained impassive, betraying none of the previous night's vulnerability. "Naruto Uzumaki departs with the knowledge and respect of the Kuja. Should he return, he will find welcome according to our ancient laws of hospitality." The formal declaration established Naruto's unique status, not quite tribe member, but more than mere outsider. Several elder warriors nodded in solemn approval while younger Kuja looked on with undisguised admiration. "The tide turns," Hancock concluded, her gaze finally meeting Naruto's directly. "May it carry you to enlightenment rather than destruction." The traditional Kuja blessing for departing warriors carried additional weight coming from the Empress herself. Naruto bowed deeply in response, respecting both her public position and their private understanding. "May your warriors remain strong and your waters clear," he replied, completing the ritual exchange. As he straightened, something unexpected happened. Sonia, the middle sister who had maintained the greatest suspicion of him throughout his years on the island, stepped forward with a small wooden chest. "The warriors gathered these," she stated, her usual wariness tempered with reluctant respect. "For your journey." Inside the chest lay dozens of small scrolls, each tied with colored thread denoting its creator. Naruto recognized them immediately as message scrolls, a Kuja tradition where warriors recorded personal thoughts for those undertaking dangerous journeys. For once, words failed him. The gesture represented acceptance he had never anticipated, especially from those who had initially regarded him with outright hostility. "Read them on difficult nights," Sonia advised, her serpentine eyes unblinking. "When the path ahead seems unclear." Naruto secured the chest with his other possessions, the weight of it representing far more than its physical presence. "I will." With final farewells exchanged, he boarded the small vessel, a sleek, single-masted craft designed for speed and stealth rather than comfort. The Kuja shipwrights had modified it to accommodate his unfamiliarity with sailing, incorporating clever mechanisms that allowed single-handed operation. As the morning breeze caught the sail, Naruto stood at the stern watching Amazon Lily recede. The assembled warriors raised their weapons in salute, a warrior's farewell. On the highest point overlooking the harbor, Hancock's solitary figure remained motionless, watching until distance rendered her invisible to normal sight. But Naruto's eyes, enhanced by both shinobi training and the Nika fruit's awakening, caught the subtle movement as she finally turned away, her long hair swirling like dark water in the morning light. "See you again, princess," he murmured, touching the serpentine pendant against his chest. "That's a promise." The Grand Line devoured the unprepared, just as Hancock had warned. Within 3 days of leaving Amazon Lily's protected waters, Naruto encountered challenges that tested even his extraordinary abilities: unpredictable weather that transformed from scorching heat to freezing hail in minutes, sea kings that regarded his small vessel as a potential snack, and the disorienting magnetic fields that rendered normal navigation impossible. "You're adapting well," Kurama observed on the 5th day as Naruto adjusted the sail to compensate for a sudden wind shift. "Your chakra network has fully integrated with this world's energy patterns." "Not a moment too soon," Naruto replied aloud, secure in the solitude of open ocean to converse with his inner companion. "That last Sea King nearly had us." The massive creature had surfaced without warning, its serpentine body dwarfing the small craft. Only Naruto's hastily formed giant Rasengan, amplified by the Nika fruit's reality-warping properties, had deterred the beast. "Your control of the fruit's powers improves," Kurama noted. "But you're still relying primarily on your shinobi techniques." "Old habits," Naruto acknowledged, checking the eternal pose that pointed unerringly toward satiety. "Besides, the rubber abilities aren't exactly suited to my fighting style." "It's more than simple elasticity," the fox reminded him. The old woman's scroll suggested the sun god's true power lies in imagination, the ability to make reality conform to your will. Naruto frowned thoughtfully. 3 years of research with Elder Nyan had uncovered fragmentary references to previous wielders of the Nika fruit, legendary figures who had challenged the world government's authority through powers that defied conventional understanding. Yet the specific nature of those abilities remained frustratingly vague, described in mythological terms rather than practical applications. "Freedom," he murmured, recalling one consistent theme in the ancient texts. "The power to bring freedom. But what does that actually mean?" His contemplation was interrupted by a shift in atmospheric pressure, subtle but distinctive to his enhanced senses. The previously clear skies darkened with unnatural speed as fog rolled across the water, enveloping his vessel in clammy tendrils that seemed almost sentient in their movement. "This isn't natural weather," Kurama growled, his senses extending beyond Naruto's physical perception. "There's energy in this mist, something cold and wrong." Naruto nodded, immediately shifting to combat readiness. 3 years among the Kuja had honed his already formidable battle instincts. He reached for the specialized kunai at his thigh, blades forged with sea prism stone tips that could affect devil fruit users. The fog thickened until visibility reduced to mere feet beyond the gunnels. The temperature plummeted, frost crystallizing along the rigging despite the tropical latitude. Most disturbing was the sudden silence, the normal sounds of wind and waves replaced by an oppressive stillness broken only by his own breathing. Then came the singing. The voice drifted through the fog, feminine, hauntingly beautiful, yet tinged with melancholy that raised goosebumps along Naruto's arms. The melody carried no words, only emotion that simultaneously attracted and warned. "What is that?" he whispered, straining to locate the source. "A lure," Kurama answered grimly. "Similar to genjutsu, but operating on different principles. It's affecting your emotional state rather than sensory perception." Naruto formed the release sign instinctively, channeling chakra to disrupt the effect. Kai. The singing faltered momentarily but resumed with greater intensity. Through the swirling fog, a massive silhouette gradually materialized, too large and irregularly shaped to be a natural island. As Naruto's vessel drifted closer, architectural features emerged from the mist, towering spires, crumbling battlements, and gargantuan walls that appeared constructed from mismatched components. "A floating fortress?" Naruto murmured incredulously. "More likely a ship," Kurama corrected. "But unlike any vessel we've encountered. The energy signature is disturbing." The singing stopped abruptly, replaced by childish laughter that echoed unnaturally across the water. A pink-haired figure materialized through the fog, hovering several feet above the waves, a young woman with gothic clothing and an unsettling smile, surrounded by what appeared to be floating white spheres with faces. "Oh my, what an interesting little boat." Her voice carried the same melodious quality as the singing, though now tinged with playful malice. "And an even more interesting captain. You're not dead or zombie, but you're not entirely normal either, are you?" Naruto maintained his defensive posture while assessing this unusual threat. The woman wasn't physically present, her form had a translucent quality suggesting projection or transformation. The ghostly entities circling her pulsed with an energy that resonated oddly with his chakra senses. "I'm just passing through," he replied evenly. "No quarrel with you or whoever controls that." He gestured toward the looming structure, island. "Ship." The pink-haired woman giggled, twirling a parasol she hadn't been holding a moment before. "Thriller Bark isn't an island or a ship, it's both. The world's largest zombie-making factory and Master Moria's personal kingdom." "Zombie?" Kurama's mental tone conveyed deep concern. "This place reeks of death manipulation, similar to Edo Tensei but cruder." "I'm not interested in zombies or this Moria person," Naruto stated firmly. "If you'll point me toward open water, I'll be on my way." The woman pouted theatrically. "So boring. Everyone who enters Thriller Bark's fog becomes Master Moria's guest." Her expression brightened with childish enthusiasm. "But you're different from the usual drab pirates. Your aura has such pretty colors. Maybe Master will let me keep you as my special toy." Without warning, one of the floating spectral entities shot toward Naruto with alarming speed. Operating on instinct honed through countless battles, he channeled chakra to his palm, forming a compressed Rasengan to intercept the threat. The ghostly figure passed straight through his technique and chest in a single movement. Coldness unlike anything Naruto had experienced flooded his system, followed by a crushing emotional weight that dropped him to his knees. "I'm worthless," he heard himself saying, the words emerging unbidden. "I'll never understand these powers, never get home, never see any of them again." Through the overwhelming negativity, he recognized the external nature of the attack. This wasn't physical damage but spiritual, targeting emotions rather than flesh. "Resist." Kurama's voice cut through the manufactured despair. "This is similar to emotional manipulation. Genjutsu. Your mind is stronger than this." The fox's chakra surged through Naruto's network, burning away the negative influence like crimson fire consuming poison. He gasped as awareness returned, finding himself still kneeling but now surrounded by a protective aura of Kurama's energy. The pink-haired woman had drifted closer, her expression shifting from amusement to genuine surprise. "You nullified my negative hollow?" "Impossible." She peered at him with newfound intensity. "What are you?" Naruto rose slowly, maintaining the defensive chakra cloak. "Someone you really don't want to fight." He injected authority into his voice, a technique learned from Hancock for dealing with potential adversaries. "I'll ask once more, let me pass peacefully." Rather than intimidation, his stance produced unexpected delight. The woman clapped her hands like a child presented with a fascinating new toy. "Oh, you're perfect. So much stronger than the usual boring weaklings." She performed an elaborate curtsy midair. "I am Ghost Princess Perona, Master Moria's finest commander. And you, interesting stranger, have just been officially invited to Thriller Bark." Before Naruto could respond, the mist thickened dramatically, and Perona vanished from view. Simultaneously, powerful currents seized his vessel, pulling it inexorably toward the massive structure. With visibility reduced to nil and unknown forces controlling the surrounding waters, direct navigation became impossible. "We're being drawn into their territory," Kurama observed unnecessarily. "Options?" Naruto considered their situation with tactical precision Elder Nyan would have approved. "We could try breaking free, combine your chakra with the Nika power and attempt to propel the boat against the current." "Possible, but without knowing what awaits beyond this fog, we might face worse dangers." "True." Naruto's eyes narrowed as he reached another conclusion. "Or we could let them bring us in. Deliberately enter the trap." There was a note of approval in Kurama's mental voice. The old man rarely mentioned Thriller Bark when describing Grand Line phenomena, Naruto recalled. A moving island under the control of one of the 7 warlords, like Hancock, but apparently with very different methods. And potentially information about devil fruits and their awakened powers. Exactly. Naruto secured his vessel's rigging, preparing for whatever landing awaited them. "Besides, I'm curious about these zombies and how they relate to the manipulation of life force. It might help us understand how chakra functions in this world." The decision made, Naruto allowed the currents to guide his craft toward the looming shadow of Thriller Bark. As the mist parted slightly, revealing glimpses of decaying grandeur and architectural impossibilities, he activated the base level of the Nika fruit's power, a subtle enhancement that caused his skin to gleam with faint luminescence and his physical attributes to sharpen beyond human norm. "Let's see what this ghost princess and her master have to offer," he murmured, anticipation replacing caution. "Maybe they'll even point us toward more information about the sun god." Thriller Bark defied conventional description. Part abandoned mansion, part maritime graveyard, the massive structure combined elements of a ghost town, fortress, and circus into a nauseating whole that set Naruto's senses on constant alert. Upon docking at a decrepit pier, he'd been escorted through labyrinthine passages by shambling figures that stank of preservative chemicals and decay, the zombies Perona had mentioned, seemingly animated corpses that retained fragmentary personalities and memories. Now, hours after his arrival, Naruto found himself in what appeared to be a banquet hall of grotesque proportions. Rotting tapestries depicting scenes of maritime devastation hung from crumbling walls. Candelabras crafted from what looked disturbingly like human bones cast flickering illumination across a feast that no living person would find appetizing. At the table's head sat the most extraordinary figure Naruto had encountered in this world, Gecko Moria, warlord of the sea and master of Thriller Bark. With his enormous pear-shaped body, tiny legs, horned head, and perpetual grin revealing pointed teeth, Moria resembled nothing so much as a demonic caricature come to life. His booming laugh echoed through the chamber at irregular intervals, punctuating rambling monologues about his plans and achievements. "And so you see, my unexpected guest," Moria was saying, gesturing expansively with hands disproportionately small for his massive frame, "Thriller Bark is my masterpiece. My zombie army grows with every fool who wanders into my domain, their shadows harvested to animate my creations. Naruto maintained his relaxed posture while processing this information. According to Moriya's boasting, his devil fruit power, the shadow fruit, allowed him to physically remove a person's shadow and implant it into corpses, creating the zombies that populated the floating island. Victims without shadows couldn't survive in sunlight, effectively becoming Moriya's prisoners unless they reclaimed what was stolen. A crude but effective form of soul manipulation, Kurama noted. Reminiscent of the Yamanaka clan techniques, but with physical manifestation. Fascinating system, Naruto replied diplomatically, sipping the surprisingly palatable wine while avoiding the suspicious food. But I'm curious why someone of your status needs an army at all. Aren't warlords protected by the world government? Moriya's perpetual grin widened further, an expression that should have been physically impossible. Kishishishi. Protected? The world government are opportunists who discard their tools when broken. I learned that lesson in the New World. His jovial demeanor slipped momentarily, revealing genuine bitterness beneath. My original crew was slaughtered there. Since then, I've built an army that doesn't bleed, doesn't fear, doesn't question, perfect soldiers for my eventual return and revenge. Perona, floating near Moriya's shoulder, interjected with childish enthusiasm. Master Moriya will become Pirate King with his zombie army. And I'll be his ghost princess forever. She directed a sly glance toward Naruto. Unless I find a more interesting toy to play with. Naruto assessed their dynamic with practiced eyes. Despite her apparent devotion, Perona's relationship with Moriya seemed more pragmatic than loyal, a partnership of convenience rather than genuine allegiance. Potentially useful information if negotiations deteriorated. An impressive operation, Naruto acknowledged, redirecting the conversation. But I'm simply a traveler seeking information, not a potential recruit or victim. Specifically, I'm researching devil fruits and their awakened states. Moriya's enormous head tilted with renewed interest. Awakened states? Kishishishi. Few possess such knowledge. His eyes narrowed shrewdly. What fruit concerns you, traveler? The mythical Zoan type, model, Nika. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Moriya's perpetual grin vanished, his massive body tensing visibly. Perona's floating form dropped several feet before she recovered, her ghostly companions circling agitatedly. The sun god fruit, Moriya whispered, all pretense of hospitality evaporating. You possess it. It wasn't a question. Naruto didn't bother denying it, instead allowing a controlled flare of the Nika power to manifest, skin glowing faintly, eyes shifting to a more pronounced blue that seemed to emit light rather than reflect it. I'm learning to control it, he confirmed. But information is scarce. I thought someone of your experience might offer insights. Moriya's expression cycled through calculations visible even on his exaggerated features. Fear, curiosity, opportunism, and finally predatory interest settled in succession. That fruit, he said slowly, is considered the most dangerous power in existence by the world government's highest authorities. Its previous wielders have threatened the very fabric of their control. A thoughtful pause. Yet you don't seem interested in revolution. I'm interested in understanding, Naruto clarified. This power came to me by chance, not choice. I need to master it before it masters me. Keek. Perona's laughter interrupted their exchange. Master, can you imagine what a shadow from the sun god would do to one of our special zombies? It would be magnificent. The calculating gleam in Moriya's eyes intensified. Indeed, Perona. Truly magnificent. Naruto recognized the shift in atmosphere immediately. What had begun as a wary meeting between potential allies was rapidly transforming into predator-prey dynamics, with Moriya reassessing him as a resource rather than a guest. I appreciate your hospitality, Naruto said, standing smoothly, but I should continue my journey while the tide is favorable. Oh, but I insist you stay longer. Moriya's grin returned, wider and more menacing than before. After all, information has its price, and your shadow would make a splendid down payment. At some invisible signal, the chamber's shadows deepened and coalesced, forming a distinctive shape beneath Moria that extended toward Naruto with unnatural speed. Simultaneously, the doors burst open as bizarre zombies shuffled into the banquet hall, creatures stitched together from disparate body parts and wielding weapons that appeared forged from nightmares. "Nothing personal, Sun God," Moria declared, rising to his full impressive height. "But your power is wasted on a mere traveler. I'll put your shadow to much greater use." Naruto had anticipated betrayal from the moment he'd entered Thriller Bark. Rather than surprise or alarm, he felt a calm certainty, the focused clarity that preceded combat for experienced warriors. "I was hoping we could be civil," he sighed, dropping into a relaxed stance that belied its defensive efficiency. "But I guess we're doing this instead." Perona giggled, spinning her parasol. "Oh, he wants to fight. How adorable." Her expression shifted to sadistic anticipation. Negative hollow. The ghostly entities streaked toward Naruto from multiple angles. Having experienced their effect once, he was prepared. Rather than attempting to block or dodge, he channeled Kurama's chakra in a precise release that created a momentary barrier of pure energy. The ghosts passed through, but this time, instead of being affected by their negativity, Naruto absorbed and redirected the emotional energy through techniques developed during his sage training. "Impossible." Perona gasped as her hollows dissipated without effect. "No one resists my negativity." "I had plenty of practice with negative emotions growing up," Naruto replied, a hint of genuine empathy coloring his voice. "Your ghosts are strong, but they can't match what I've already overcome." Her stunned expression suggested few had ever spoken to her with understanding rather than fear or dismissal. Before she could respond, Moria's shadow attack reached Naruto, a scissors-like manifestation intended to sever his shadow from his physical form. "Shadow scissors technique," the warlord proclaimed triumphantly. The attack connected perfectly, then passed through Naruto's form as it dissolved into smoke. "Shadow clone," the real Naruto's voice came from behind Moria, startling the massive man. "A technique from my world that works surprisingly well against shadow manipulators." Moria whirled with surprising agility for his size, his face contorted with rage. "Zombies! Capture him!" The undead creatures shambled forward en masse, a grotesque parade of partially decomposed bodies animated by stolen shadows. Naruto assessed them with tactical precision, noting their uneven movements and vacant expressions. "These aren't like Edo Tensei resurrections," Kurama observed. "They lack the original's personality and abilities. More like puppets than true reanimations." "That makes this easier," Naruto murmured, forming a familiar cross-shaped hand seal. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 20 perfect duplicates materialized throughout the chamber, each moving with the original's speed and precision. The zombies faltered in confusion, their limited intelligence unable to process multiple identical opponents. Perona recovered from her earlier shock, floating higher for a better tactical view. "Don't just stand there, idiots. Attack them all." The battle erupted in chaotic violence. Naruto's clones engaged the zombies with coordinated efficiency, while the original focused on Moria himself. Years of training with the Kuja warriors had refined his already formidable taijutsu into something beautiful and lethal, a fusion of shinobi techniques with the flowing movements favored by Amazon Lily's defenders. "You're making a mistake, warlord," Naruto called as he evaded another shadow attack. "I came seeking information, not conflict." Moria's expression contorted with increasing frustration as his shadows failed to capture his nimble opponent. "The sun god's shadow belongs in my collection," he roared. "Stand still and accept your fate." "He's obsessed with your fruit's power," Kurama noted. "This isn't rational calculation anymore but fixation." Naruto nodded imperceptibly, coming to a decision. Reasoning had failed, demonstration might succeed where words could not. He ceased his evasive pattern and planted his feet firmly, facing Moria directly. You want to see the sun god's power? He asked quietly. Then watch carefully. Drawing deeply on both Kurama's chakra and Anika fruit's energy, Naruto initiated a transformation unlike anything he'd attempted previously. The two power sources, once separate and occasionally conflicting, had gradually harmonized during his years on Amazon Lily. Now they flowed together in perfect resonance, creating something entirely new. Light erupted from his form, not the golden glow of Kurama's chakra cloak nor the simple white luminescence of basic Nika manifestation, but a radiance that seemed to bend reality around it. His body elongated, growing larger while maintaining human proportions. His hair flowed upward like flames, skin bleaching to pristine white that contrasted sharply with tribal markings that appeared across his torso and limbs. Most dramatically, his heartbeat became audible throughout the chamber, a rhythmic drum that resonated with the wooden structure of Thriller Bark itself, causing dust to fall from the ceiling as the entire room vibrated in sympathetic harmony. The awakened form, Moria whispered, genuine or replacing avarice. The warrior of liberation. Perona drifted closer despite obvious fear, her hollows circling protectively. He's beautiful, she murmured, childish facade momentarily forgotten. Like the sun breaking through storm clouds. In this transformed state, Naruto perceived reality differently. Physical limitations seemed mere suggestions rather than absolute laws. The zombies' movements appeared laughably slow, their attacks predictable to the point of irrelevance. Most significantly, he could visualize the shadow connections binding them to Moria, thin threads of manipulated life force that pulsed with stolen vitality. With movements too swift for normal perception, Naruto targeted these connections. Each touch of his transformed hand severed the unnatural bond, releasing the imprisoned shadows back to their original owners. Zombies collapsed like marionettes with cut strings as he moved through their ranks with divine efficiency. Stop! Moria howled, desperation replacing confidence. Those shadows are mine. The warlord launched his ultimate technique, Shadow Asgard, absorbing hundreds of shadows into his own body. His already massive form expanded grotesquely, muscles bulging beyond anatomical possibility as borrowed power flooded his system. I'll crush you and take your shadow by force, he roared, his voice distorted by the transformation. Naruto faced the monstrous warlord calmly, his transformed state radiating an authority that transcended physical intimidation. Your power comes from stealing others' essence, he observed, compassion rather than condemnation in his tone. That's why it will always fail against those who've earned their strength through their own efforts. Moria charged with earth-shaking steps, each footfall cracking the ancient floorboards. His shadow-enhanced fist, now the size of a small boat, swung toward Naruto with devastating force. Time seemed to slow for Naruto in his awakened state. He perceived not just Moria's physical attack but the conceptual structure behind it, the manipulation of shadow as substance, the subversion of identity, the fundamentally parasitic nature of the warlord's power. With perfect clarity, Naruto understood what the ancient texts had meant by the power to bring freedom. He didn't dodge or block. Instead, he reached out with both transformed consciousness and physical hand, grasping something intangible yet fundamental, the conceptual boundary between shadow and substance, between stolen power and rightful ownership. Liberation, he whispered. Reality rippled visibly, like heat waves above desert sand. The shadows comprising Moria's enhanced form suddenly separated from his physical body, not returning to their original owners but manifesting as distinct entities around him. Hundreds of shadow silhouettes surrounded the warlord, each bearing the shape and stance of the person from whom it had been stolen. Moria collapsed to his knees, his body shrinking rapidly to its original proportions as borrowed power abandoned him. The liberated shadows hung suspended for a moment, as if considering their freedom, before dispersing through walls and floors, returning to owners who might be continents away but were still connected to their essential essence. What have you done? Moria gasped, staring at his trembling hands. I freed them, Naruto answered simply, his transformed voice resonating with harmonics that seemed to reach beyond physical hearing. That's what Nika does, liberates that which is unnaturally bound. Throughout Thriller Bark, the consequences manifested immediately. Zombies collapsed by the hundreds as their animating shadows departed. The entire structure groaned as whatever shadow-based power had maintained its cohesion began to fail. Ancient timbers stressed beyond endurance cracked with reports like gunfire. The island is breaking apart, Perona realized, genuine fear replacing her usual affected emotions. Master Moria, we need to evacuate. Moria remained kneeling, shell-shocked by the systematic dismantling of his life's work. 20 years of shadow collection, zombie creation, and power accumulation, undone in moments by a power he had failed to comprehend. Naruto allowed his transformation to subside, returning to normal human proportions though maintaining a subtle glow. The exertion had cost him significantly. Accessing the awakened form had drained nearly all his available energy, leaving muscles trembling with fatigue. Impressive, Kurama commented, his own presence diminished by the effort. You've discovered the conceptual nature of the fruit's power rather than just its physical manifestation. Not a moment too soon, Naruto murmured as thriller bark continued disintegrating around them. Perona drifted uncertainly between her fallen master and Naruto, conflict evident in her expression. For perhaps the first time, the ghost princess faced a situation her powers couldn't control through fear or manipulation. He won't recover from this, she said finally, gesturing toward the near catatonic Moria. Everything he built was founded on stolen shadows. Without them, he'll need to find strength within himself instead, Naruto finished, compassion tempering his exhaustion. It's not too late for him to change his path. Perona's laugh held bitter understanding rather than her usual childish malice. People rarely change so fundamentally. Her gaze shifted to Naruto with new intensity. But you're different, aren't you? You actually believe in redemption. Before he could respond, the floor beneath them gave way completely. Naruto's depleted reflexes still allowed him to leap clear, landing on a relatively stable portion of the collapsing chamber. Perona transformed into her ghost state automatically, becoming intangible as debris passed harmlessly through her form. Moria wasn't so fortunate. The section where he knelt crumbled entirely, sending the warlord plummeting into the darkness below with a final bewildered cry. Master! Perona's anguished shout echoed through the disintegrating banquet hall. She dove after him without hesitation, her floating form disappearing into the same abyss. Naruto stood amid the destruction, weighing moral obligation against practical necessity. His body demanded rest after the awakened transformation, yet leaving others to perish, even enemies, violated his fundamental principles. You can't save everyone, Kurama cautioned, sensing his intention. The entire structure is failing. Focus on your own survival. I know, Naruto acknowledged, already moving toward the chamber's exit. But I can try to help those who want saving. 3 days later, a battered but intact vessel approached the massive mangrove trees of Sabaody Archipelago. Its single occupant guided it with practiced efficiency toward one of the less populated docks, avoiding the busier ports where marine presence might complicate his arrival. Naruto had changed since leaving Amazon Lily. Beyond the physical evidence of his battle at Thriller Bark, healing cuts and fading bruises, a new confidence infused his movements. The awakening of the Nika fruit's conceptual powers had answered questions that 3 years of research couldn't resolve. He wasn't alone on the small craft. Are you sure about this? Perona asked from her perch atop the mast, her ghostly form partially substantial in the morning sunlight. Sabaody isn't kind to those without protection. The auction houses might have information about devil fruits, Naruto replied, securing the mooring lines. And Rayleigh mentioned contacts here who understand awakened powers better than most. After Thriller Bark's collapse, he'd found Perona attempting to drag Moria's unconscious form to safety. The warlord had survived his fall but remained unresponsive, his mind seemingly broken by the loss of his shadow empire. Against her initial protests, Naruto had helped transport Moria to a small island nearby where loyal subordinates could tend to their fallen master. To his surprise, Perona had requested to accompany him afterward. Thriller Bark was my home for 10 years, she'd explained with uncharacteristic sincerity. Before that, nothing worth remembering. Now it's gone, and Master Moria may never recover. Her ghostly eyes had studied him with unnerving intensity. You destroyed my world but offered help anyway. I want to understand why. Now, as they prepared to enter the lawless archipelago, Naruto wondered if he'd made the right decision. Perona's powers were formidable but unpredictable, as was her emotional stability. Yet something about her reminded him of himself in younger years, isolation masked by bravado, loneliness disguised as independence. The grove Elder Nyan mentioned is in that direction, he said, pointing toward a less developed section of the massive trees. We should reach it by midday if, well, a new voice interrupted, smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. The harbor master mentioned a most unusual vessel had docked, but I scarcely expected such interesting passengers. A tall man with red-tinted glasses and a flamboyant pink-feathered coat approached along the weathered dock. His smile suggested absolute confidence bordering on arrogance, while his languid movements belied the predatory assessment in his eyes. Don Quixote da Flamingo, Perona whispered, instinctively shifting to full ghost form. Another warlord. Far more dangerous than Master Moria ever was. Doflamingo's smile widened at the recognition. The ghost princess herself, far from her master's haunted island. And a companion whose bounty poster has been circulating among the highest echelons of marine headquarters. His gaze fixed on Naruto with disturbing intensity. The Sun Fox with the 300 million berry bounty. Impressive for someone who appeared in our world only 3 years ago. Naruto maintained neutral positioning while processing this information. He'd anticipated eventually gaining the world government's attention, but not a bounty of such magnitude. I wasn't aware they'd given me a nickname, he replied conversationally, buying time to assess potential escape routes. Oh, they've given you much more than that. Doflamingo's fingers twitched slightly, a gesture that raised Naruto's combat instincts to maximum alert. The 5 elders themselves have taken an interest in your activities. That's quite rare for a newcomer. He's dangerous, Kurama warned unnecessarily. His body language suggests absolute confidence in his combat abilities. I'm just here seeking information, Naruto stated truthfully. No interest in conflict with warlords or world government. Doflamingo's laugh held genuine amusement. Information is my specialty, Sun Fox. Perhaps we could arrange a mutually beneficial exchange. He gestured toward the archipelago's interior. My associates maintain establishments in Grove 16. Much more comfortable for discussion than these public docks where marines might interrupt. The invitation reeked of ambush, yet Naruto sensed an opportunity beneath the danger. Doflamingo clearly possessed knowledge worth obtaining, potentially including details about the Nika fruit that even Elder Nyan's ancient texts hadn't contained. I appreciate the offer, Naruto replied carefully, but I have prior arrangements. With Silver's Rayleigh, perhaps. Doflamingo suggested casually, his smile never wavering when Naruto's expression confirmed his guess. The Dark King keeps interesting company these days. First the Revolutionary Army contacts, now the Sun God himself. Perona drifted closer to Naruto, her ghostly form radiating concern. We should leave, she whispered. He's playing with us. Doflamingo's enhanced hearing caught her words. Playing? Not at all, Ghost Princess. I'm extending professional courtesy to a potential ally. His smile took on a sharper edge. After all, we both know what the world government does to those who possess powers they can't control. The implied threat hung between them, wrapped in a veneer of cordial conversation. Naruto recognized the tactic from diplomatic encounters on Amazon Lily, the subtle reminder of mutual vulnerabilities disguised as friendly warning. I'll consider your invitation, he replied neutrally. After I've concluded my original business. Of course. Doflamingo adjusted his feathered coat with theatrical precision. Grove 16, whenever you're ready. Ask for Disco's auction house. He turned to leave, then added almost casually, oh, and you might want to disguise that pendant. Snake Empress tokens attract unfortunate attention in certain quarters. As the warlord sauntered away, his pink feathers bright against the weathered dock planking, Naruto touched Hancock's serpentine pendant reflexively. "He's well informed," he murmured, tucking the item beneath his collar. "All warlords maintain intelligence networks," Perona replied, regaining her partial solidity now that the immediate threat had passed. "But Doflamingo's is supposedly second only to the world government itself." Her expression grew troubled. "If he knows about your connection to Amazon Lily, then others probably do as well." Naruto finished the thought, concern for Hancock and the Kuja surfacing despite his confidence in their ability to defend themselves. "We need to find Rayleigh quickly." They gathered essential supplies from the vessel, securing it with additional mooring lines before heading toward the archipelago's interior. Sabaody revealed itself as a bizarre wonder, massive mangrove trees with roots large enough to support entire towns, connected by bridges and divided into numbered groves that functioned as districts. Bubbles rose constantly from the resin-rich soil, floating upward in iridescent clusters that children chased with delighted shrieks. Despite this whimsical backdrop, Naruto's senses detected darker currents beneath the surface. Slavery operated openly in certain areas, with auction houses selling human beings to aristocratic buyers without pretense of legality. Criminal organizations maintained territories marked through subtle symbols that ordinary travelers might miss but which his shinobi training immediately identified. Most concerning were the celestial dragons, world nobles wearing atmospheric suits who traveled with marine escorts and slave entourages. Ordinary citizens prostrated themselves as these individuals passed, fear evident in their postures. "The ones who can kill without consequence," Perona explained in hushed tones when they observed one such procession from a safe distance. "They consider themselves gods above human law." The implication sickened Naruto, whose entire philosophical framework revolved around protection of the vulnerable. "And the world government sanctions this?" "The world government exists to serve them," she replied with uncharacteristic bitterness. Master Moria understood that much correctly, we're all just pieces on their game board. As they approached Grove 13, Rayleigh's supposed location, Naruto's enhanced senses detected a familiar energy signature before his eyes confirmed it. Seated outside a small bar named Shaki's Rip-Off Bar, a silver-haired man played cards with three increasingly frustrated opponents. His weathered features and relaxed posture belied the immense power Naruto could sense coiled within him, controlled but readily accessible. "Silver's Rayleigh," he identified quietly to Perona. "The Dark King himself." The man looked up immediately, as if hearing his name despite the considerable distance. His gaze locked onto Naruto with unervingly precise focus before a broad grin split his face. "Well, look who finally arrived," he called out, abandoning his card game without ceremony. "The Sun Fox of Amazon Lily. Hancock's message said you might be stopping by." Naruto approached with appropriate respect, recognizing both the man's legendary status and his potential as an information source. "You received word from Amazon Lily?" 2 weeks ago. Rayleigh clapped him on the shoulder with surprising strength. "The Snake Princess doesn't write often, so when she does, I pay attention." His gaze shifted to Perona, one eyebrow raising quizzically. "Interesting company you're keeping. Last I heard, the Ghost Princess rarely left Thriller Bark." "Circumstances changed," Perona replied evasively, maintaining a slight distance. Rayleigh's expression suggested he understood more than she'd articulated. "They generally do in the Grand Line." He gestured toward the bar entrance. "Come inside. Shaki will want to meet the man who apparently melted the Ice Queen's heart." As they followed the legendary pirate into the establishment, Naruto couldn't help but wonder what exactly Hancock had written in her message, and whether his journey was following the path she had anticipated when they'd said their farewells on that moonlit peak. The serpentine pendant rested cool against his skin, a constant reminder of promises made and connections that stretched across dangerous waters. Whatever information Sabaody held regarding the Nika fruit's powers, Naruto suspected it would lead him into deeper currents than even Hancock had foreseen. Shaki's rip-off bar justified its name through pricing but compensated with information worth far more than money. The proprietress herself, an elegant woman whose ageless features and knowing eyes suggested depths of experience beyond her apparent years, greeted Naruto with unexpected familiarity. "So you're the one who turned Amazon Lily upside down," she observed, mixing drinks with practiced efficiency. "Boa Hancock isn't known for forming attachments, yet she specifically requested we assist you if you appeared." "We were allies," Naruto clarified, accepting the offered beverage. "She taught me about this world while I helped train her warriors." Shaki's knowing smile suggested she interpreted his diplomatic phrasing differently. "Of course. Just allies." She winked at Rayleigh. "Like we were once just crewmates, right?" The Dark King chuckled, settling into a worn armchair with comfortable familiarity. "Hancock's personal feelings aside, her interest in your journey makes strategic sense. The power you carry has historical significance few understand." "The sun god Nika," Naruto confirmed, seeing no reason for pretense among individuals Hancock trusted. "I've experienced its awakened state recently, but my understanding remains incomplete." Rayleigh's expression sharpened with interest. "Awakened already? That's unprecedented for someone who's possessed a devil fruit for only 3 years." His gaze grew evaluative. "Your unique chakra system must have accelerated the process." The casual reference to his internal energy stunned Naruto. "You know about chakra? But that's from my world, not this one." "This world has known many visitors from other realms," Rayleigh replied cryptically. "Though few arrive with powers intact as you did. The barriers between worlds thin in certain places and times. He possesses knowledge beyond what we anticipated," Kurama noted with surprise. "Perhaps even about methods of interdimensional travel." Perona, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "You mean there are others like him? From different worlds?" "There have been," Shaki answered, joining their conversation. "Though most assimilate completely, forgetting their origins within a generation or two." She studied Naruto thoughtfully. "Your friend is different, he retains both his original powers and his memories with unusual clarity." The implication staggered Naruto. If others from his world had crossed over previously, might there be pathways back? Could he eventually return to the hidden leaf? The possibility he'd nearly abandoned reignited with unexpected force. "The awakening of your fruit changes things," Rayleigh continued, oblivious to Naruto's internal revelation. "The world government fears the Nika power above all others because of its connection to the Void Century and what they call, dangerous freedom. The century they've erased from history," Naruto recalled from Elder Nyan's lessons. "But what does liberation have to do with historical records?" Rayleigh and Shaki exchanged loaded glances, a silent communication between longtime companions that spoke volumes. "The truth about the Void Century would liberate people from the world government's carefully constructed narrative," Shaki explained carefully. "And liberation is precisely what the sun god represents." During that erased period, Rayleigh added, voice lowered despite their private setting, the powers now consolidated under the world government were distributed among many nations. The ancient weapon that unified them, forcibly, has connections to the very power you now carry. This aligns with the fragmentary references in the Kuja scrolls, Kurama observed. The sun god as a force of resistance against tyrannical unification. Naruto processed this information with growing understanding. "So when I liberated the shadows from Moria's control, you were manifesting the fruit's most fundamental aspect," Rayleigh confirmed. "The power to free that which is wrongfully bound, whether physical, conceptual, or spiritual." The conversation might have continued along this philosophical path had the bar's door not burst open with enough force to crack the frame. A young woman stumbled through, clutching a bleeding wound across her shoulder, her clothes torn and expression desperate. "Shaki," she gasped, collapsing against the counter. "They took her. The celestial dragons took Koala." Shaki moved with unexpected speed, catching the injured woman before she hit the floor. "Nojiko, what happened?" The name registered in Naruto's mind immediately. Elder Nyan had mentioned Nojiko as one of Nami's associates, a skilled navigator from Kokoyashi village who had left to study medicinal plants throughout the Grand Line. We were gathering samples in Grove 42, Nojiko explained between pained breaths, wincing as Shaki examined her wound. 3 world nobles with marine escorts appeared without warning. When Koala refused to move from their path quickly enough, they just shot her, then decided to take her as a specimen because of her fishman tattoos. Rayleigh's previously relaxed demeanor vanished completely, replaced by cold fury. When? 20 minutes ago. Nojiko attempted to stand despite her injury. They were heading toward the human auction house in Grove 1. Please, we have to save her. Koala barely survived slavery once before. The name triggered another connection in Naruto's memory. Koala, the former slave who had been returned to her home by Fisher Tiger, later joining the Revolutionary Army as one of their key operatives. Her capture by celestial dragons represented not just personal tragedy but potentially devastating intelligence loss for the revolution. The human auction house is under Doflamingo's protection, Shaki noted grimly. Even you would face complications attacking it directly, Ray. Not necessarily. All eyes turned to Naruto as he stood, decision crystallizing with absolute clarity. I was already invited to Disco's auction house in Grove 16 by Doflamingo himself. If both establishments are connected. Rayleigh studied him with new respect. You'd risk confronting celestial dragons? The consequences would be extreme, admiral-level response at minimum. I don't care about their status, Naruto replied with quiet intensity. Slavery is wrong. Period. He turned to Nojiko, who was watching him with desperate hope. We'll get your friend back. I'm coming too, Nojiko insisted, straightening despite her injury. Koala saved my life twice during our research expedition. I won't abandon her. Perona drifted closer to Naruto, her expression uncharacteristically serious. Attacking world nobles means making enemies of the entire world order, she warned. Even Master Moria feared them. Naruto touched Hancock's pendant reflexively, remembering her carefully controlled fury when describing her own past enslavement by celestial dragons. How her sisters had suffered the same fate. How their experiences had shaped Amazon Lily's isolation and defensive posture. Some enemies are worth making, he replied, meeting Perona's gaze steadily. I told you on Thriller Bark, I believe people can change, systems can change. But sometimes change requires someone willing to act first. Something shifted in Perona's expression, recognition of the same quality that had drawn her to accompany him after Thriller Bark's destruction. Your negativity resistance will help against the panic most people feel around world nobles, she conceded. And my hollows can scout undetected. Rayleigh's weathered face split in a grin that belied his age. Shaki, I believe these young people might need some logistical support for their rescue mission. He cracked his knuckles with obvious anticipation. I was getting bored with retirement anyway. As they quickly assembled equipment and developed their infiltration strategy, Naruto found himself studying Nojiko with renewed interest. Despite her injury, she displayed remarkable composure, methodically checking the herb pouches at her belt while describing the auction house layout from previous reconnaissance. The main entrance will be heavily guarded, she explained, sketching a rough map on Shaki's bar top. But there's a service entrance here, used for bringing in merchandise discreetly. Her voice cracked slightly on the euphemism. That's likely where they took Koala. Your knowledge of the facility seems detailed, Naruto observed, not accusatory but curious. Nojiko met his gaze directly, blue hair framing determined features. The Revolutionary Army has been documenting the slave trade for years. I volunteered to help after what happened to my island. Her expression hardened. Some prices are worth paying for freedom. The sentiment resonated deeply with Naruto, echoing his own ninja way. This woman, despite lacking devil fruit powers or superhuman abilities, confronted systemic injustice through strategic action and unwavering resolve. She reminds me of Sakura, he thought. Ordinary human strength made extraordinary through determination. We'll get your friend back, he promised again, this time with the weight of absolute certainty. And perhaps change a few things about this world in the process. As they prepared to depart, Shaki pulled Naruto aside briefly. Hancock warned you might attempt something like this, she murmured, amusement mingling with concern. She said your moral compass would inevitably point toward the world government's greatest sins. She knows me well, Naruto acknowledged, surprised but touched by Hancock's accurate prediction. Indeed. Shaki pressed something into his hand, a small transponder snail with distinctive serpentine markings. For when you need to contact Amazon Lily directly. The Snake Princess anticipated you might require reinforcements after today's events. The small communication device represented more than practical support, it symbolized Hancock's continued connection despite physical distance. Naruto secured it carefully within his gear, the weight of it somehow balancing the serpentine pendant against his chest. Tell her I'm keeping my promise, he said quietly. I'm learning to control these powers, just as I said I would. I suspect she already knows, Shaki replied with that same knowing smile. Safe hunting, son Fox. The world may look very different after today. With plans finalized and equipment distributed, the unlikely rescue party departed Shaki's rip-off bar. Their destination, the human auction house, represented everything Naruto had come to despise about this world's power structure. Yet beneath his righteous anger burned something else, anticipation. For the first time since arriving in this strange reality, he felt fully aligned with purpose. The sun god's power thrummed in harmony with his chakra and Kurama's energy, three distinct forces unified by a single intent. Liberation. Chapter 3, Liberation's dawn. Fishman Island existed in perpetual twilight. Massive bubble domes protected the underwater civilization from crushing oceanic pressure, filtering sunlight into ethereal blue-green luminescence that bathed coral architecture in dreamlike quality. Schools of exotic fish drifted through water canals that served as streets, while merfolk and fishmen moved with the fluid grace of beings perfectly adapted to their environment. Naruto stood at a viewport in the royal palace of Ryugu Kingdom, watching hammerhead shark fishmen patrol the outer perimeter. 3 weeks had passed since the incident at Sabaody Archipelago, 3 weeks that had transformed him from obscure bounty head to internationally recognized threat. The sea fox was now discussed in whispers throughout the Grand Line, his actions at the human auction house having earned him a bounty increase to 500 million berries and the personal enmity of the celestial dragons. Still brooding about Sabaody. The deep, rumbling voice belonged to Jinbe, Knight of the Sea and Warlord of the Sea. The massive blue-skinned fishman approached with surprising grace for his bulk, taking position beside Naruto at the viewport. You saved 47 lives that day. Including Revolutionary Army Captain Koala. And painted targets on all your backs in the process, Naruto replied, tension evident in his normally relaxed posture. The world government now suspects Fishman Island of harboring me. Jinbe's laugh held no humor. They've suspected us of worse for centuries. Prejudice against fishmen runs deep in their institutional memory. The events at Sabaody had unfolded with unexpected violence. What began as a covert rescue mission transformed into open confrontation when the celestial dragons refused to relinquish their property, even when offered 10 times the purchase price by Rayleigh. Naruto's awakening of the Nika fruit's power had shattered not just the auction house's physical structure but the very concept of ownership binding the slaves to their masters. In the chaos that followed, Naruto had personally carried the wounded koala to safety while Perona's negative hollows incapacitated marine reinforcements. The world government's response was predictably extreme, dispatching Admiral Kizaru himself to Sabaody within hours. Only Rayleigh's unexpected intervention had allowed their escape, the Dark King holding the Admiral at bay while Naruto and the others fled aboard a Kuja vessel that had fortuitously arrived with supplies for Shaki's bar. Now, sheltered within Fishman Island's protective barriers 10,000 meters beneath the ocean's surface, Naruto confronted the consequences of his actions and planned his next move. King Neptune has granted you sanctuary for as long as necessary, Jinbe continued, massive arms crossed over his broad chest. Your actions against the slave trade earned you that much. I appreciate it, Naruto acknowledged, finally turning from the viewport. But we both know I can't stay indefinitely. My presence endangers everyone here. Where will you go? Jinbe's penetrating gaze suggested genuine concern rather than mere strategic calculation. The Revolutionary Army has offered you position and protection. Naruto smiled slightly. Dragon seems interesting, but joining any existing faction would limit my options. He touched the serpentine pendant that had become his personal talisman. I need to understand these powers fully before aligning with anyone's agenda. The massive bubble surrounding Fishman Island distorted sunlight penetrating from the ocean's distant surface, creating rippling patterns across the palace floor. In this underwater realm, Naruto had found unexpected parallels to his own childhood experiences. The fishman's struggles against human prejudice resonated with his history as Konoha's Jinchuriki, feared and ostracized for containing power beyond others' understanding. I've been speaking with the historians in the sea forest, Naruto continued after a thoughtful pause. The poneglyph there contains references to Joy Boy and the sun god that align with what I experienced during the awakening. Jinbe's expression grew guarded. Those ancient texts are forbidden knowledge. Which makes them exactly what I need. Naruto's eyes reflected determination that had become his hallmark. The world government fears the Nika fruit because it connects to the void century somehow. Understanding that connection might help me control these powers more effectively. Their conversation was interrupted by rapid footsteps approaching from the palace interior. Nojiko appeared in the archway, her blue hair tied back practically, her expression urgent. There you are, she said, slightly breathless. The Den Mushi from Amazon Lily is active. Hancock is requesting direct communication. Naruto's eyebrows rose in surprise. Though he had maintained occasional contact with Amazon Lily through the transponder snail Shaki provided, Hancock herself rarely initiated communication. For the Snake Princess to request direct conversation suggested developments of significant importance. I'll leave you to your call, Jinbe rumbled diplomatically. Remember, the banquet in your honor begins at sunset. Queen Otoheim would consider your absence a personal slight. As the fishman departed with surprising delicacy for his massive frame, Nojiko approached Naruto with the portable transponder snail. The small creature's shell bore distinctive serpentine patterns matching Hancock's aesthetic, its expression somehow capturing the Empress's haughty demeanor despite the biological impossibility. You've been avoiding her, Nojiko observed with the directness that had become characteristic of their relationship. 3 calls in the past week, all answered by Perona or myself. I've been busy with research, Naruto replied, not quite meeting her perceptive gaze. Emichan. The non-committal sound conveyed eloquent skepticism. And it has nothing to do with guilt over breaking your promise to master these powers before taking action. Their relationship had evolved rapidly since Sabaody. Nojiko's knowledge of Grand Line navigation had proven invaluable during their escape, while her background in medicinal herbology had helped treat injuries sustained during the conflict. More significantly, her pragmatic intelligence provided balance to Naruto's occasionally impulsive idealism, a dynamic that had gradually transformed professional respect into deeper connection. Hancock understands why I did what I did, Naruto insisted, taking the transponder snail from her outstretched hand. Of course she does. Nojiko's smile contained equal parts affection and exasperation. She also understands you well enough to predict exactly how you'd respond to witnessing injustice firsthand. Before Naruto could formulate a suitable retort, the snail's expression shifted to an exaggerated version of Hancock's regal features, its mouth moving in perfect synchronization with her voice. 3 weeks, the pirate empress stated without preamble, her tone carrying familiar imperial disapproval. 3 weeks since you transformed from researcher to revolutionary by assaulting celestial dragons on global broadcast. Naruto winced. The coincidental presence of news reporters at Sabaody had resulted in his actions being transmitted via video snail to audiences worldwide. The imagery of a glowing white figure liberating slaves while facing down world nobles had instantly transformed him from obscure bounty head to symbol of resistance. It wasn't planned, he began, then stopped himself. No, that's not entirely true. I couldn't stand by while people were treated as property. You of all people understand why. The transponder snail's expression softened imperceptibly, a subtle change that reflected Hancock's carefully controlled reaction to his reference to her own past enslavement. I understand perfectly, she replied, her voice modulated to ensure privacy despite the connection's security. What concerns me is your continued presence on Fishman Island when Marine forces are mobilizing against it. Naruto exchanged alarmed glances with Nojiko. What do you mean? Jinbe hasn't mentioned any Marine movements. Because he doesn't know yet. The snail's features conveyed Hancock's grim satisfaction at possessing superior intelligence. 2 hours ago, the 5 elders authorized Operation Sundown, deployment of Vice Admirals Momonga and Enigmo with a 12-ship fleet to inspect Fishman Island for compliance with world government regulations. A pretext for searching for me, Naruto realized, mind already calculating implications and options. Precisely. They'll arrive within 48 hours. The snail paused, then continued with unexpected gentleness. You cannot be there when they arrive, Naruto. King Neptune's kingdom would not survive direct confrontation with such forces. The strategic assessment was brutally accurate. Despite Fishman Island's natural defenses and warrior traditions, direct conflict with multiple vice admirals would result in devastating civilian casualties. Naruto's presence would transform the end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.